All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Dean Camacho. I do the communications. I'm the communication specialist for the Immaculate Heart Community. I do want to say thank you all for joining, as well as everyone that we have on Zoom. Thank you for hopping on, grabbing lunch, and joining us. So, some things to remember real quick as we all continue to get settled a little bit. Out of both of these doors, you're going to have restrooms down and to the left. There are surveys on the tables in front of you. Please feel free. We would love that feedback and kind of just want to know what you want to see from future installments. As a reminder as well, these events are provided free of charge for everyone. So we do appreciate any donations and support to kind of help keep these programs running and accessible to everybody. Our next Lunch and Learn is September 19th. We are welcoming Reverend Paul Anthony Daniels. He's going to be leading a critical discussion on gender justice. Flyers are available on the info table as well as the tables in front of you. We also do have some volunteer opportunities coming up throughout the rest of the year, so please keep an eye out, be in contact with Pam. And then we also do want to announce a Taste of Justice dinner that we do have October 19th. We're going to be honoring our legacy partners as well as the Rebel Hearts filmmakers, so we'd love to see you there. Please keep in mind towards the end, there will be a question and answer portion. We will be walking around with a microphone. And if you'd like to ask a question, comment at all, please raise your hand. We'll walk over, pass it to you, and just speak clearly into the mic so everyone online can hear you as well. We will alternate between in-person questions and online questions. So we do appreciate the patience. And now we begin the big line of thank yous. A big thank you again to all of the Immaculate Heart staff who helped kind of bring this together, as well as all of the St. Paul staff for not only providing the space in which we connect, but also doing so with endless support. Thank you to Matt and Joan for sharing this moment with us. We also thank Chef Tim for providing and cooking this meal. We also showed appreciation last time, so a big thank you to everyone, including all the farm workers involved every step of the way to getting this food to us. The sacrifice they make of going to work, unsure if they will return home, is something many of us do not have to fear. So we take this time to acknowledge the love and effort put forth by them and those making these sacrifices to keep us and our country fed. You can turn off the news, but you can't turn off life and all the things going on around us. And that's why we are here today for connection, comfort, lifting each other up, and pushing through it all together. With all that being said, I give a warm welcome to IHC President and Principal Executive Officer, Sherry Purcell.
Thank you, Dean. Welcome, everybody, to our August Lunch and Learn. Today, we will be offering a kind of a 2-for-1 special. In a moment, I will be welcoming two people to our series, Mother and Son, Joan Harper and Matthew Harper. But before that, I'm inviting you to take a moment to participate in what we're calling our Power Up. We have a Power Up practice that we initiated a couple of months ago, and you can find out more about it on our website. And the idea here is that we've extended an invitation to anyone who's interested to pause for a few moments at noon every day to quiet ourselves from the noise and the chaos that surrounds us on all levels of our lives right now. We're living in unprecedented times, and many of us struggle with the pain and the indifference that's impacted our lives as our country seeks to find its moral compass again. So we invite you now, if you wish, to join us and as we power up our hearts with love and peace and extend that energy outward toward the world. So if you will, if you're wanting to close your eyes, I invite you to maybe put your hand or hands over your heart. Excuse me. Hands over your heart, center yourself in this space, be in present where we are right now. We've come from different locations, we're here. And we're present and we're breathing into our hearts. Let's do that now a couple of times together. Breathe deeply into your heart. Again. Again. And as you power up your heart, let's radiate out love and compassion to everybody in this room. Everybody is coming with different issues, different hopes, different dreams. We extend that love and compassion to each other. Breathe into your heart again, power up your heart again. And this time, breathe out love and compassion to the Los Angeles community. We are still occupied. People among us are suffering greatly. Extend love and compassion. Again, breathe into your heart, power up your heart, and with love and compassion. And this time, breathe out love and compassion to our country. Again, power up your heart. Breathe out love and compassion to Mother Earth and the world. We are all one on this planet, and we want to embrace each other. And finally, breathe into your heart and extend love and compassion to yourself. You are enough. You are good enough. You are helping those who need it through this practice and everything else that you do. And so I say, let it be. Amen. Thank you. So as Dean said, this year we're celebrating 55 years as a community that was formed in 1970 when we changed from a canonical community to a lay community, to the lay community that we are today. And our formation story is probably best told in the documentary film called Rebel Hearts. Many of you have seen it, I'm sure. You can view it on Amazon Prime, but also look for announcements on our website because we do screenings of that film periodically all over the area. So we're not nuns anymore. We do not live in a convent. We consider ourselves a community without walls. We are men, women, gay, straight, married, single. We live all over the continental United States. We have members in Canada and in England. We're a group of people who believe in God and live out our faith through justice and social justice activities. This Lunch and Learn series gives us an opportunity to actually live out our goal statement, which calls us to foster access for all persons to truth, dignity, and full human development, and to strategically change practices and situations which impede such access. So today we are welcoming Joan and Matthew Harper. Joan founded Fair Trade LA in 2005, and she's been a dedicated advocate for social justice and global solidarity ever since. She worked with the Office of Life, Justice, and Peace for the Archdiocese of Los Angeles for 16 years, where she promoted domestic and anti-poverty and fair trade programs. She holds an MBA from Loyola Marymount University, and her prior corporate experience brings a strong business perspective to her advocacy work. Her global engagement includes travels to India, Thailand, Ghana, El Salvador, Honduras, with Catholic Relief Services, where she witnessed development programs in agriculture, microfinance, and fair trade. Her travels also include visiting fair trade artisan cooperatives in Palestine, learning directly from artisans about their craft and their stories. Matthew Harper is a member of the Los Angeles Catholic Worker. He lives intentionally with other members who are supported by a host of volunteers to do Jesus's teaching, specifically the corporal works of mercy. Matt helps run a Skid Row soup kitchen, a house of hospitality, and provides resistance against systems of harm. Matt is also an organizer with White People for Black Lives, which works to build white anti-racist capacity to end white support for state violence in Los Angeles. He served as a teacher and a catechist in LA's Catholic schools, confirmation programs, and elsewhere. So those of you who have joined us before for our Lunch and Learn know that we have three objectives when you come to these sessions. We seek to educate ourselves about various justice and social justice issues. We ask you to pray in your own faith tradition for issues you hear about, for what you hear about these issues. And we ask you to find a way to act on what you're hearing. So we believe in putting our faith into action, and we ask you to do the same thing. So as you listen to Joan and Matthew, consider how you might get involved in some of the work that they will be talking to you about. So please help me, join me in welcoming the two Harpers to our August Lunch and Learn series.
Sherry.
Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. And I have to say on Matt's and my behalf, we really are, well, delighted is not quite the right word, but delighted and enjoyable to be with all of you physically here today and all of those of you on Zoom. Thank God for Zoom, right? I want to especially thank Sherry and Pam and Dean and Gabby, who are the ones that connected with us, and of course all the others here that have helped put this on. Our theme, there's something on the paper, but it was also from the suburbs to the struggles for justice, finding our place in change work today. Change work has always been needed. Since February, when we first had an opportunity to talk about our life experience and to share this, to August is mind-boggling with what's happened in those few months. So change work is even more critical. So thank you all. Thank you all. And we hope that you glean something from what we say, get inspired by something of what one or both of us says for your own journey. And I suspect everyone, I'll say in the room, and that's the global room on Zoom, is not here for the first time, is not new to the struggle. If you are, wonderful. We need more new faces. But we're here and we're in solidarity, and that's what keeps us going. Suburbs, I was born in 1950. I will do the math. I'm 75. Okay, get that out of the way. And in a home that was very traditional Catholic, middle class, regular churchgoers, no matter where we vacation. My mother made sure there was a Catholic church that we could make on Sunday because there was no Saturday mass. Not politically active at all. I don't even remember discussions around the table with my folks about politics. However, we did have the bust of John F. Kennedy in our house. And that was because he was our Catholic president. And that's as much, I think, politics as we got into. And I know that we were impacted when he was shot and killed. I was 13. But again, it was more, this wonderful person is not here anymore. Not so much, well, what about his policies and what's going to happen? It really wasn't until I went to what is now Loyola Marymount University. I was one of the first class of women, so it was Marymount at Loyola at the time. And it wasn't till there that it was like, oh, there's a world outside. Oh, there's a Vietnam War. Oh, there's, classes, protests down Westchester Boulevard, opportunities to really have my mind opened up to what was going on in the world. I have a close friend who applied to be a conscientious objector. And I remember thinking, oh, that's a real grown-up thing. I mean, I was not going to be personally impacted, of being drafted, but here was somebody who was and chose to go that route and was able to do that. Even for my husband, who sadly passed away 3.5 years ago, he was a kind of a peripheral friend at the time when we were at LMU, but he was facing the draft when he graduated. Unfortunately, the draft ended our last year of college, so that ended up not being an issue, but those were real experiences. Now, unfortunately for me, my wokeness, I kind of went back to sleep for about the next 9 years. I concentrated on going back to school, working, moving with the company. But fortunately, not at the time, it didn't seem to be a fortunate thing. I had a major life experience change. And it was an opportunity to say, okay, now I'm 31. What am I doing with my life? And I thought about the Peace Corps. And I thought about the Peace Corps during college, but didn't do it. Okay, now I've got all this schooling, I got work experience, I've got my language that I'd been learning. Perfect. By then, Bob was a really close friend. And he had gone in the Jesuit Volunteer Corps after college because he didn't know, he thought he was going to get drafted. So he was in Alaska teaching there. So I asked him to write a letter of recommendation for me. And he did a beautiful one that got me accepted to the Peace Corps. But God had another plan. And I wasn't quitting my job and selling my home in Colorado to go to Honduras. But Bob, in between knowing that I'd applied and got accepted, he was hosting people in San Francisco because a close friend of mine was getting married. The dance at the wedding, the cable car ride, I don't know what it was, but it was God working in our life saying, no, you're not going to Honduras. You're going to move back to California and pursue this wonderful relationship. I'm grateful every day for that. I have 3 wonderful young people that are a gift to me. And it was an opportunity to get back involved. Beyond War was an anti-nuclear group up in the Bay Area that was really, really solid folks of dealing with anti-nuclear. But I found the only thing that was missing for me there was I couldn't use my Catholic language. It was dignity and it was a human, all the right things. But so when we moved back to LA and I got involved at our parish St. Bede's Justice and Peace group, which was very active, it was like, okay, this is home. I can talk about Catholic social teaching. I can talk about, all of this within a Catholic Christian context. So I think the journey, seeds being planted, that will be a reoccurring motif in what I say. And they say Oscar Romero probably didn't talk about this thing that's attributed to him of we plant the seeds, we may not see them grow. It's a wonderful prayer, but doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's if you think about your own life, seeds that got planted and how those come through in your life ahead. So I will turn it over to Matt.
Great. We're going to go back and forth.
We're
so
going back
please
and forth.
enjoy
We're a
us.
tag team here.
So I grew up nestled into the suburbs of a predominantly wealthy and white community of La Cañada. And therefore, I am not surprised how hard it was for me to understand that my experience in the foothills of LA was different from folks outside of Los Angeles or the pocket that we were in. And if my life has taught me anything, it's that more than books, more than words, school, personal experience is the thing that most helps me grow and understand. For me, vulnerable, sustained encounter and relationship building with diverse peoples and diverse realities has changed my life. My parents, whom I love dearly, gifted me many isolated moments and experiences in worlds quite different from the ones that I grew up in. But in the worlds that we moved through, the cards were kind of stacked against them that I would think any differently. So they said, you know what, Matt, for high school, you should leave La Cañada. You should go to downtown LA, go to Loyola, and see what happens in that other world. Well, that started a thing of me leaving. I fled to the East Coast for college. I then spent 2 years working at a youth prison in Central America after college, craving the experiences and the formation that came in new spaces. The more I got out, the more I encountered. The more I encountered, the more I found myself faced with the juxtaposition of very contradictory things. The more I was confronted, the more I was forced to open myself up to real people in their complicated lives. It was only after leaving home that I came to understand what had always been right in front of me, that my city that I had grown up in had a long history of exclusion. Our disproportionate wealth and whiteness had been a part of centuries of design, years of redlining, of racial housing covenants written into property deeds, of sundown town type practices, and that legacy of exclusion did everything that it could to keep the fullness and beauty of God's creation away. I remember being in the 7th grade and my teacher took her class to pray the rosary in the chapel there. And as we fumbled through some Hail Marys and Our Fathers, the back of our church burst open and in came William Barrios. Now, William Barrios was the one homeless person who was in La Cañada. And I say one person because the city had a practice of anytime someone came in who was homeless, someone would call the police. The police would show up, put them in the back of the squad car, and drive them out of town. William, in the complexities of his mental health struggles and addiction, and in a beautiful way, his obstinance, refused to be kept away. And so William bursts into the back of the church and walks down the aisle, gets to Christ crucified on the cross behind the altar, and begins yelling at him. I think about, in hindsight, how much my community treated him like he was a piece of trash. And I realized he had a lot to be angry about to God. Now, I have all sorts of compassion for my teacher who had 32 students who were not her children, who was not trained in how to support someone in the complexities of mental health and addiction struggles. But I look back and I realize our church community could have built a relationship, could have offered support in a way for William that we chose not to. And ironically, sitting in the chapel now years later, I think we were before the consecrated body of Christ, but we could not see Christ in William Barrios in front of us. And I remember now in hindsight thinking, surely we can do something better. And when I think about that day, I think about the stained glass and the beautiful tapestries and the marble and the gold and all of these things that got our resources and energy. And I see now that our decisions to prioritize exclusion and extravagance are part of what creates the very problem of homelessness and the need for a Skid Row where I now spend my life. Our policies and legacies of exclusion require a place to banish and deport people to. Our refusal to meet the needs of our neighbors means that we are just moving the burden to someone else, somewhere else. Our hoarding of resources and opportunities is a theft that makes it so other people will not and cannot have enough. I like to say I had to leave home because if this community was resistant to welcoming new people, I needed to experience something different. And I say I had to leave home because I needed to find people, like my mom was saying, that allowed me to live the values I held from my Catholic faith when I wasn't seeing it. And so while I advocate the importance of leaving home, I know in hindsight that we need to not be able to leave the places we are from. We need to be able to remain there. Our responsibility to invest in the people and the places that formed us and shaped us, to change the practices that are so common in them and the cultures that we find there, and to invite the people in my life into a new way forward, a new way of showing up right now where they are. I often think we have too narrow an idea of who is an in-need person that needs our service. I realize I have work to do in service to the wealthy, privileged, often removed people because theirs is a need that's so desperate, it's creating needs for others elsewhere. So I left LA with the conviction I would never return home, but one day I realized I had to go back and get my people. I had to find wells that would sustain me, but needed to return to those places. And so a question for you to chew on, if you will, what have you done with all of the learning, the transformations, the clarity of purpose that you have received, such that your life, your home, and those who formed you might be invited into change?
He's clearly the better agitator than I am. One of the things I was thinking about with this is the idea of leadership. And I'm going to go out on a limb and suspect that everybody is taking their experience in some sort of leadership role. And for me, as I said, it was the Justice and Peace group at my parish, which I ultimately was co-chairing with two other wonderful people for many years. During that time, I got connected because of being an active parish with the Justice and Peace Office, which is what it was called at the time, in Tom Chaboya. And some of you, I'm sure, know Tom Chaboya. He was restarting a Justice and Peace Commission, and he asked me to be one of the first 5 of going to be 15. And gratefully, and I tell him this every time I see him or talk to him, he ignored my no. I'm too busy. I have children. I have, I got a pig I gotta go take care of, the gospel story. And he just said, no, I really need you on this, because I was there as in the introduction for 16 years, half of that on the commission, half working part-time there. It was home to me. It was, I can use all of this that I've learned, but in a diocese, all the 300 parishes that are out there and talking to all the millions of Catholics, and about social justice. The wonderful thing was Sister Ann Field, Sister of Social Service, and Sister Sean Hodges, who many of you know, were on our commission. And we, as much as we're all Catholic, we all talk Catholic social teaching, we realized we didn't all talk the same language. So every half of every meeting, every month, was them instructing us on some piece of the Catholic social teaching, so that we really could go out and, with knowledge, talk about this and engage people in that work. So leadership, obviously learning, as even Matt's question, learning, and then what do we do with it? The other thing that I'm really thankful for is every year in November, there's a collection in pretty much every parish in the United States, Catholic Campaign for Human Development. And it's the Catholics Anti-Poverty, Domestic Poverty Campaign. Back in the good days, that funding would go to community organizing groups in the diocese. And one of the groups that got that funding was CLU, Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. I was part of that funding team, so I would go out and meet with the leaders, and are there enough low-income voices at the table, not just, people thinking that they know what the workers' right needs are and things. I was so moved by, we all come to what we do with a moral voice, but when you have an organization that says, we're here, we're Catholic, not Catholic, we're clergy, we're laity, we're supporting these people because that's what matters. I was so moved that that was in many, many, many years ago, and I am still involved in CLU. And that was a stretch, because I'm sitting in the office one day and I'm hearing this noise across the street from the Archdiocese. It is a hotel that is being picketed, and the workers are on strike. Well, I go across the street, and who is it but CLU, of course. Yeah. So I said, okay, I'm going to pick up that picket sign, come out of the office, go do my protest 1968 Vietnam War, and go participate. And because I have nothing to lose, these workers need people like me to be out supporting. So again, as I've said, I'm still very much part of the CLU network. But in addition to leading, it's also listening to people. It's supporting the people that are really in need. They know what they need. They just don't know how to get it, or they don't know the various things they need to know to make their lives different. And so that's where the support, they're the leaders then, and I'm there to support them. Matt mentioned his White People for Black Lives, and he had, and going back to the suburbs, he asked us one time a number of years ago to invite our friends from the suburbs to come to our home and hear stories from Matt and his colleague about White People for Black Lives, reforming LA jails specifically, planting seeds, get them educated about this kind of issue that they're probably not spending a lot of time with. And then also, obviously, fundraise, have them leave a nice check, hopefully, when they leave. So it was, an opportunity, because it's being invited. Who's inviting you to something? What do you say yes to? That was Matt. How can I say no to Matt, right? But in pushing us, saying, hey, get your friends in here, and let's talk about something they probably don't want to talk about, but it's important, and we need to find ways to do that. So again, moving from the comfortable to the uncomfortable.
So when I heard the title of the talk for today, Finding God in Service to Others, I realized that for a lot of my journey in thinking about service, the reality was that service started from a very self-driven motivation. I want to feel like I'm giving back and helping others. I want to feel good. I want to lessen the guilt I feel. I want to fulfill my spiritual obligations. And how often that self-centered nature was then thrown off when something challenging arose. I like to say on Skid Row, I've been lied to, I've been robbed, I've been assaulted, and I've been tricked, but no more than I was in Catholic schools. I remember going to the kitchen one day, and one of our regulars, Carl, was sitting on the sidewalk outside of our soup kitchen. Seeing me, he blurted out, "Can I have a pair of socks?" And the reality was that a lot of folks are always asking for things, knowing that maybe in this moment I can get something I need from a person, given the reality of their perpetual need. Now, as I entered, there happened to be a pair of socks sitting right inside that I was able to give him. And I found myself wishing, gosh, I wish it was always this easy to meet the needs of people. But a few hours later, when I exited the kitchen, unbeknownst to Carl, my socks were on his blanket of goods that he was trying to sell. And he turns to me and says, "Want to buy some socks?" "Sorry," he muttered, realizing I was the person who had given him the socks. As you can imagine, moments like that can hurt one's pride. He pulled one over on me. I am here to help him, and here he is taking advantage of my kindness. How audacious of him. The reality, though, is that my acts of service weren't about him or about his needs, about the complex systems he has to navigate and hustle to survive in every day. And when I'm not careful, these moments can harden my heart. Because what has moved me to act is not God's love or my desire to love my neighbor, and it risks closing me off to remembering that I am simply a conduit of God, not the architect in need of control or gatekeeping. So how do I put God back at the center of this service thing? When Chris showed up at our kitchen 2 years ago, he asked for 30 trays of food to go, and I found myself immediately skeptical. Is he going to sell these for money out on the street? Though he had named, he's like, "I'm here to grab them for people in my building who can't get out," I did not trust him. And each week he would return with his stroller, asking for 30 containers to go. I'd smile through my teeth. I would help him fasten them to his stroller and send him on his way. Well, a few months ago, I was invited to visit the Cecil Hotel with Reverend Little here, which had been a hub of community resources and support now. And with so few Catholics doing meaningful work in downtown LA, with Reverend Littlefield there, part of the old Catholic Church, it felt like there could be some fruit building bridges and connecting. As I was talking with Reverend Littlefield about his work, I saw Chris enter the building with his stroller, and I admitted in a moment of humility to Reverend Littlefield my suspicion. Well, without missing a beat, Dylan assured me and humbled my arrogance that that is not the case, that Chris, in fact, had been delivering food to many of the hotel-bound elders in the Cecil Hotel, and that therefore, and maybe in some ways, his act was one of the things that led us to connect. In my need to control and to judge so quickly, I had missed God right before me the whole time. I had missed the reason to help this person, to trust his story. I had missed what was possible because of our shared generosity and connection. And despite my pride, God was using Chris to grow the fruits of our work and relationships that even my pride couldn't stop. Can we trust that God is working through us, around us, in us, even if it doesn't make sense to us, even if it isn't known or controlled by us? Now, a lot of people have very strong judgments and narratives about homeless folks. How often we wield that to withdraw our support, our services, our love, rather than trusting God can work through us, even when it seems illogical or even irresponsible. A year ago, Tommy came to our soup kitchen, he's a gentleman about my age, with our friend Siglinda. Now, anyone on Skid Row will know that Siglinda is a miracle worker. She has housed more people than I've ever seen. She has brought people back from the death of overdose. She helps keep people supported in their housing. She has put her hands into bullet wounds to keep people alive long enough after tragedy has struck. And Siglinda was training Tommy how to do outreach on Skid Row. "Tommy, this is the hippie kitchen," Siglinda said. Tommy said, "Oh, I know the hippie kitchen," with a smile. Well, for 10 years, Tommy had struggled with addiction down on Skid Row and had frequented our garden. All these years later, he remembered our place with a little bit of fondness, which doesn't mean he wasn't happy to have taken advantage of us all those years ago. We'd given him many things over the years that he had apparently pawned off to feed his habit: shopping carts, blankets, toiletries, and more. And he had started his fair share of fights in the garden where we try to keep peace. He said it to me, I remember, "I've caused a bit of trouble for you all, but I'm really grateful you didn't throw me out as often as you could have. You always made me feel like I belonged." And when one day he was finally ready to get sober, he remembered that one of our community members had told him the name of a place where maybe when he was ready, he could go. And when he was ready, he went and he got clean. And now he was returning to our soup kitchen in order to be continuing work to support people who, like him, were struggling with addiction all these years later.
Okay.
In a world that draws the line in the sand and says there is no redemption past this point, God breaks through and makes the impossible probable. So providing healthy food to folks on Skid Row is a profound act of ours that honors a fundamental right of all people. But I think more important than that dimension of our work is that we create a space for folks who would otherwise never go to Skid Row, never encounter someone who's unhoused, never have a long, sustained, meaningful interaction, to have that and to be transformed. I've seen it time and time again. The vision of the Catholic worker is not that our house alone solves the problems of our society. The dream was not houses of hospitalities, but Christ rooms in every home of every person of faith to meet the need of someone in their community who is struggling. That our church would hold that responsibility of caring for the needs of our neighbors. I love to say if every 54 Catholics took one homeless person in the LA Archdiocese, everyone would be off the streets tomorrow. And so in these complex interactions, we find God. We create space for others to find God through the very nature of our service to others. And so I leave you again with a question or two to consider. Who in your communities do you or might you take time to learn from? And second, who do you see in your communities who deserve your support and nurturing?
I think an important thing is part of those questions too is what do we bring? What do we bring to the struggle? And how are we stretching? Matt, through his White People for Black Lives, asked Bob and I if we would join them and deep canvas. Now, that means knocking on doors. I don't do door knocking, or I didn't, I should say. That is not something that would normally be something I would be drawn to. But again, trusting the invitation, who was inviting us. You go through training, and the issue is jail reform. And so you're knocking on a door, you have a script, and it's not about selling something, it's not about trying to convert somebody, it's having a conversation. What surprised us in doing that was how many people opened their door to us, how many people kept their door open to us. Obviously a few that, didn't want anything to do with us, but also how many people had somebody that in their family or in their life experience that had been in jail or was in prison. Especially in the neighborhoods we were going in the neighborhoods, you would think those people don't have those problems, right? So it was really helpful to us, not only to engage in that conversation, planting seeds, maybe getting them to take some action, but also for us to say, we got to keep stretching. It wasn't easy, but it was doable. We could put it in our wheelhouse and do that. Another huge stretch, surprisingly for me, and I'm embarrassed actually to say it, was in 2008 when they had the major protest down on Century Boulevard for the hotel workers. 400 and some people were getting arrested, participating in civil disobedience. I was part of CLU. CLU was getting involved. I was invited. I was shocked at how hard a decision that was for me. What's the worst? I'm spend a night in jail. I get a bologna sandwich. Like literally that's the worst. I'm not going to be deported. I'm not going to lose my job. I don't have health issues that keep me from this. So again, I was shocked how hard that was for me to make that decision, but I did make that decision. Seeds being planted. My husband and my daughter was in high school, were there with me. We were all marching and protesting and all of that. And of course, when it comes time for civil disobedience, those aren't getting arrested, go to the sidewalk, and the rest of us stay in the middle of the street. And so I'm there with these wonderful people, and we sit down on the ground, and the horses come by, which are extremely intimidating. And then, you get tie wraps on your, I know about your story a little bit. You get tie wraps, so you get marched down to the bus, and away you go. What didn't strike me at the time was the impact on my daughter. She's not one to share a lot openly of what's going on inside, but she went back the next day to her all-girls Catholic high school and talked about the experience to the students, to the faculty. And I guess, I was so caught up in my own experience, I hadn't thought about the impact on her. And again, she's taking those seeds to others who are like, your mother got arrested? I'm like, tell me more, This was not to pat myself on the back. But anyway, those opportunities to just, who's asking, obviously you trust who's asking you to do something, and then the impact of that. Just quickly on Fair Trade LA, actually 2005 was a busy year because in 2005, there were 5 people at my kitchen table. We all knew about fair trade, products made in the developing world under all the right conditions. People can build a well or a village because of the money that they get. But we didn't all know each other. But we said, let's go talk to people. Well, here we are 20 years later, and it's an educational nonprofit. We have made cities fair trade. We have made congregations fair trade, schools fair trade, awareness and products. In fact, in 2020, obviously COVID, the Los Angeles City Council passed a resolution to be a fair trade city. Now, that was not an easy battle, just because it's a big city, but they are the largest city in the North America that's fair trade, 4th largest city in the world. Okay. So it's no small thing. It's no small thing that they took that and they did that. And so, but it just started with people around a kitchen table saying, I don't know where this is going to go, but let's go talk to people. So, and the other one was actually my husband and I being invited by Ignatian Volunteer Corps, the senior version of the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, to start a chapter in LA because we were kind of all things Jesuit. And so we did. We started, it's 50 and older. You volunteer 2 days a week. You meet in community. It's, you don't have to live together like they do with the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, but it's all the other components. And that's been going 20 years. It's now called Ignatians West, and it's wonderful. So if that's something that you think you want to have wonderful talents and skills to share with other people, that's a good way to do that. I guess lastly, just self-care. I think I might have mentioned that in the beginning that, this is a struggle. It's not about tomorrow. It's not about fixing it all, but being in community, being together. I mentioned Oscar Romero earlier, and I had a wonderful opportunity to be a mentor to Jasmine Tovar, who was a CLUE fellow this last year. And I learned as much from her as I think she learned from me. She's a powerful woman, but her parents knew Oscar Romero in El Salvador. And so she was sharing stories. And I was like, okay, these gifts, these are gifts that come to you. So, hang around people that care. Obviously we do, we're all here together. And I'll talk a little bit in a few minutes more about fair trade.
So I mentioned after college, I went to Belize for 2 years. And while I was there, there was a local community development group called the Center for Community Resource Development that saw a torrent of crises happening in their neighborhood and very little support coming from anyone who could have done something about it. So they said, much like Dolores Mission, we're going to solve our own problems. And so they began mapping the resources of their communities. They knocked on doors. They found out what are the jobs in our communities that we can connect people to? What are the industries, the businesses, the empty lots? Heck, what are the skills and the talents and the aspirations of our community such that we could figure out together the needs that we have and how we can solve them? When you make a commitment to community, as we do at the LA Catholic Worker, especially a somewhat unstructured and decentralized one, it's not only possible to bring only a part of yourself, nor is it safe to assume that community will be perfectly idyllic, even though we espouse a pretty lofty vision of the world. paraphrase the Brothers Karamazov, a book that Dorothy Day, the foundress of the Catholic Worker, loved, community, in reality, like love, in reality, is a harsh and dreadful thing, and compared with community or love in dreams. We come as complex people with both beautiful and broken sides that inevitably come out. We come as people with skills we are aware of, skills we don't even realize are valuable, and the potential of growing even more parts of ourselves to meet the needs before us. And when we go to help others, we quickly learn that we ourselves are in need of as much healing as anyone else. But at the LA Catholic Worker, we've committed ourselves to a group of people that we don't really get to control. We've committed ourselves to a small patch of earth, a place where we are invited to labor each day to put flesh on the bones of our faith and values, even as the world and sometimes my church undermines. Find a place to stand and stand there, Father Dan Berrigan once said. But it has never really been about the people we serve. It has always been about finding God, about being faithful, remaining faithful to God. And what better place to do that than the forsaken parts of our world and the woundedness of our own hearts. And in those places, the LA Catholic Worker has done some pretty magical things, only some of which I have gotten to be a part of in my last years. When the city tried twice to erase Skid Row from the map, our community and others fought tirelessly to make sure that those 50 plus square blocks of resources, of opportunities, of community were not wiped away. When people and laws tried to criminalize poverty, making it illegal to be poor and to try and survive, investing our collective resources into practices of death and destruction rather than life and possibility, we've spoken out. We've offered our bodies as sacrifice. We have found all sorts of ways to labor for a different world with the world around us. When hard things overwhelm, we always seek out community. We have helped grow the work of Catholics for Palestine to try to bring our church into justice work for the people of Palestine and Gaza. We have fostered the coalition of faithful resistance to connect people of conscience and help usher them into public witness in this moment of particular barbarity. We have organized scores of people into civil disobediences, to blocking the bathrooms in City Hall so our council members will know what it's like for our folks on the street who don't have access to consistent bathrooms, and so much more. Whenever we've had an extra bed in the capacity to meet the needs of someone, we've tried to bring one more person into our non-traditional family, but a family nonetheless that seeks to see how we can help at personal cost to build the kingdom of God. We've listened to the needs of our community and sought to bring others and all of their skills and capacities and resources and desires to be part of building this new world in the shell of the old. We have sought to grow joy, to deepen connection, to laugh and to celebrate, to find God, and to imagine new ways of doing this great project. Over my last 9 years, we continue to try to imagine what does it mean to live simply, to live counter to a culture of decadence and waste that throws so much away, that hoards so much, and teaches us that scarcity is a thing we should worry about. We seek to hold institutions accountable, to challenge them in our world, and to labor to build alternatives. We believe that it really is possible to craft our social and political and economic and familiar worlds around our commitments to others. And it's been a powerful experience. But more often than not, the best we do is just show up again the next day to try again and to humble ourselves. I've met documented folks ready to step up for undocumented folks, housed folks ready to step up for unhoused folks. It's not enough just to care, as you all know, and so we strive to do more. So I wonder for you, how can you bring your faith, your resources, your skills and wisdom and experiences and bodies into this work continually and in ways that make you excited to get up each morning to try it again?
And we're almost done. Just a few things about fair trade. Again, their products, you can find them on the shelf. Fortunately, more now than 20 years ago when we started looking at what's on the shelf. And there are certain logos that you can look for that confirm that they're fair trade, or at least ethically made. Speaking of ethics, I looked over when I was sitting here at lunch and saw my long ago friend, Daniel Cardoza, who was sitting as, well, wait a minute, I mean, I haven't, he was part of Fair Trade LA early on, and his company is Ethics Merch. They're really working to put factories and the products together so that, I'm not doing it justice, but if you're interested or you have business that you want to figure out how to do your products more sustainable, clothing and things like that, you know, that he would be the man to speak to. But we, as Fair Trade LA, will come out and speak to people about fair trade. We, before COVID, did this more, but we're bringing it back together. We have business members who don't necessarily have a store, but they have their products from the varying countries. We will have what we call boutiques at anywhere, I mean, a congregation or wherever would be appropriate to have that. And they'll come and they'll, in addition to selling their products, tell the story of the artisans who made it. There's a wonderful store we're fortunate to have called Villages Pasadena, which is in Pasadena, full fair trade store. There's another one, I believe it's in Sierra Madre area or somewhere out that way. Another one. There's a tension here between the Harpers because we have been at the table to help make the Olympics fair trade. In 2012, London Fair Trade and London Olympics were completely fair trade, meaning coffee, tea, bananas, chocolate, whatever, because London is so far ahead of where we are. Paris had a significant amount of products there that were fair trade. Having the Olympics here at all is certainly a question on the table. And the problems before the current president were going to be problematic. Now they're even more problematic with what influence that could exert on having the Olympics here. But having said that, we are still at the table. We're on one of the committees that help decide products. So if it goes through, if it's forward, obviously having fair trade products is a good value. So we're still involved with that. But you know, we're here to help. It's how you buy what you buy. It can make a difference. We have wonderful podcasts now that have come about from COVID that our TED Talks became Fair Talks. And so we have our podcasts. You'll learn a lot and it's wonderful. We have a fair package once a month. For $15, you'll get a product delivered to your door. You don't know what it is. Love it, enjoy it. If you don't, re-gift it. That's okay too. Like your friend with the socks. You can sell it too if you want. So that's okay. I hadn't heard that story before, so that's a good one. So anyway, we're just here to come talk. If you have a congregation that wants to look into being a fair trade congregation or a school, or that's all stuff we do. So please give us a call.
Not that you all don't already have enough to do on your plates, but I'll share just briefly about some of the ways people connect with us. I have a friend, Shelley, who likens the racial justice work that we can do as a society to a highway with many on-ramps. For all the justice work that there's a highway moving us towards the beloved community that Christ and King talked about. And wherever you are, however long you've been in the struggle, there's an on-ramp before you ready to bring you into the sacred lineage of resistance and justice work that's moving us forward, regardless of whether you know all the terms or feel like you have paid your dues in it yet. We need everyone. For those who feel unsure of how to start, which I'm sure isn't this group, but in case it's anyone in the Zoom world, there's a place to start with resources. There's a place to start with collecting things or organizations need, like canes and rain ponchos that we don't always think of in the day-to-day. But maybe folks are past that and they're ready to start talking to people and having difficult conversations, to encounter others, to learn about their lives. And so maybe that's coming to volunteer at our soup kitchen. Maybe it's coming to one of the many events we put on. But for some, those conversations with a stranger feel a little safer than maybe those conversations with our parishes, our pastors, our neighbors, our family. And so how might we be reaching out to others, inviting speakers in, deciding on projects that we can work on together? How can we support you to find ways to support your local encampment so that you don't need to come to Skid Row to do work in our community? Because surely your communities have need as well. Maybe you're like, I've acted, but I still need to deepen my understanding of what's going on, my analysis of why this crisis seems to be unsolvable. And so maybe join us for a culture critique where we take time to dive into the complexities of these issues, to wrestle with the dimensions, and to vision and listen to ways that people are moving forward with it. Maybe you're part of a different spiritual community that doesn't fill you, because surely this spiritual community fills you, and you're looking for a place where that well can be filled, where you can have your faith matter and be an active part of your journey. We do Wednesday night liturgies and potlucks. We do Bible studies. We invite folks to participate in so many of those ways. Maybe you're looking for new ways to protest and show up in the streets. And so we do a weekly vigil outside of the federal building against the barbarism there. Or maybe you want to dig a little deeper and you want to learn about and join us on one of our weekly community patrols, where we monitor for ICE activity in vulnerable neighborhoods to make sure that those among us who are most vulnerable are not taken away. Or maybe you want to consider a more serious protest. We're talking right now about what it could look like in this moment to really push back. Maybe you have a gift or skill you don't know where it fits in the movement. Whatever you have, wherever you are, please know we would love to celebrate with you, to find your place, knowing that wherever we are, the next step is always a little beyond our comfort zone, and we never get to stop and say, that's as far as I go. And so we invite you to consider this. So I would like to close with a brief little story. My brother and I, back in January, had to help my mother move out of our childhood home as fire took over the hills behind her house. As we began to grab valuables and her and plug them into a car so that they could get out of here, we kind of looked at each other and realized we should knock on our neighbor's door. So I ran over and banged on the front door. Stacy had been loading the car, but given her husband Jeff's health challenges, realized she could use a little bit of extra help. So I joined her, helped her finish loading the car. And as all of this was happening, a thought crossed my mind. And that thought was, my family and my neighbor's family have both benefited from the development of industries and economies that have heated our earth and facilitated the drought that was now exacerbated by the flames. And we were trapped in an ecological crisis created by the very thing that in some ways had once privileged us. Now we were trying to make sure that we could make it out of that inferno alive and together. When their car's engine wouldn't start, we had to move them to the next car, and Jeff's health has been deteriorating, and as he moved with his walker across the driveway to the car, another thought crossed my mind that Jeff and I do not see eye to eye politically in many, many ways. But as he navigated his body, I thought about the impact our current administration must be having on his access to medical care. And as a formerly self-employed man, what it must mean for his Social Security and his stability and his well-being in this era of government efficiency. And in a world willing to throw anyone away in this new moment where our vulnerabilities are increasing at neck-breaking speed, here we were fleeing this thing together and realizing our political inclinations, as diverse as they are, neither were going to save either of us. There's no place to retreat to insulate ourselves from the uncertainty and unseeming scariness of this moment and world. Ignorance and inaction will not stop the insidious plans that these rotten fruits have for us. And I think about having cast my lot with the people of Skid Row, not being a desire to have a hero complex or a desire to be a good Catholic or out of a sense of altruism or shame. I've made my choice because I have seen the uncertainty of the world and the precarity of the promises that power make to us to assure us we'll all be okay. And I know they're full of it. I have chosen this life because I know that first they came for the undocumented, and then they came for the environment, and then they came for LGBTQ folks, and then they came for workers, and then they came for our democratic processes. And one day, I and those I love will be in their crosshairs, and there will be no one left to stand up for us. So I know my safest bet, and yours is in community, is in building life alongside each other, and as much diversity and as much beauty as we can, because we keep us safe. We don't do this work to help others. We do it to find God and the world where we, when we are most vulnerable, will all be okay. As Dorothy Day says, as my shirt says, the only solution is love, and love is found in community. So I think about Jesus peddling his works of mercy to people. And for the longest time, I thought, that's nice. That's very sweet of him. But I realized he doesn't care about us being kind. It's not about being kind. It's because he knew that our best defense in the world to throw people away was the one where when you can meet a need of a neighbor, you do it. And when someone else needs the help, that they will offer it to you, that it is this symbioticism and not just a self-preservation. This is our work to be done, and it still starts with each of us. Each day, again, when we rise, I think about the song, not in the darkness of buildings confining, not in some heaven light years away, but here in this place, the new light is shining. Now is the kingdom, and now is the day. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Please feel free to come grab some of our free or cheap things here and know you're supporting good work. But if nothing else, come and say hello and let us know how we can support the work that you all are doing.
Any Q&A?
And there's going to be a Q&A,
Oh,
but
that's
I just
afterwards.
wanted to
Okay,
name
great,
that.
great. I
so
don't
we
wanna-
didn't
We're not
forget.
leaving yet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? There you go.
Yeah. I'll pass the mic.
Oh, there you go.
So not so much a question, but a status report. Chris has actually moved out of the Cecil. I helped him move 3 weeks ago. He is in a fully supportive mental health housing
Wow.
in Lafayette Park.
Wow.
And he's getting the
wonderful.
treatment that he needs.
Beautiful.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Anything on Zoom?
Oh,
Equity.
Nothing so far. Rosa, I guess you're next.
that's good.
Our community has, we have several commissions, and one of them is the Commission for Anti-Racism as Spiritual Transformation. Roman Catholic Women Priests also has a group called Good Troublemakers, which I didn't want us to name it, but all right, white women couldn't stand the word racism. And it's difficult because it seems like anti-racism perpetually gets turned into let's study about racism instead of let's look at how we support racism. And white people for Black Lives, I'm very interested if they have any type of training that doesn't allow a group to get away from the real root of the problem.
Yeah, and just briefly, they do a 4-day virtual during this winter, in person during the summer institute called Unmasking Whiteness. That is a chance to do like exploring your own family story, exploring your own socializations, exploring your own complicity. That's really beautiful and wonderful. And the reality is that like the person who's going to opt into something like that, is probably partway along the journey. And so we're trying to create ways to go out and to knock on doors and to talk to folks. And there's been some incredible ways to have really meaningful, strong conversations with strangers that allow us to begin to dive into some of those things, knowing that people are at very different places. But I think to your point, it's so easy to keep it in the intellectual realm or to keep it in this like coded, sugar-coated them versus us world. And the beautiful thing about our work is our primary goal is like, how do we support the communities who are leading the struggle for justice in our neighborhoods, in our communities? How do we plug in? How do we bring what we have and what we need? And I've learned there's no better place to learn than in practice, in movement, in the streets, in the experiences of life. And that all of these other pieces that sometimes get in the way can often get leveled and supported through so that people can actually step in a way that is not just about them and where they're at, but about learning from those who, as my mom said earlier, like have the wisdom and experience to guide us. But I'm happy to talk more later if that's helpful.
First of all, thank you so much. Thank you. I think as someone who's grown up with the Catholic worker movement all my life, that has provided another alternative about what community looks like and can be. It's been just critical. And so to see it being carried on forever in just really profound ways. I have just 2 quick questions. I was just really struck. I work at Alexandria House and we have 800 calls a month from folks we're not able to invite in because we don't have space. So I was just curious, just a small question. So when you do have a bed available, given the realities of downtown LA, like how does that happen? Like, how do you pick that? So that's just a
Yeah.
kind of a question. But the other thing that we found is often folks come into the community that we're trying to create at Alexandria House with all the stereotypes that are being promoted in the larger society. And really it's in living together, being together, hearing each other's stories that folks begin to confront those stereotypes and find that there's so much more that connects us. But I know the community at Catholic Worker is amazing. So if you wanted this is one critical step you never want to forget in creating community, what might that be?
Yeah. The first, someone called us a couple months ago and they're like, I know this guy, I've known him for 6 months. He's really great. He needs housing. Can you house him? And I was like, it sounds like you're the perfect person to house him. We are constantly getting calls from folks who don't know where to turn. They know we do this thing and it's heartbreaking to be like, we cannot be the only solution here. And because we know 30,000 people on Skid Row, we often do it based off of like some level of relationship. If we're going to be building family together, there's so many different types of housing to provide. We're not always equipped for the more intense, support-driven, needed housing. But we're always, trying to find this balance too of like, it's our tendency to welcome in people who look like us. It's our tendency to welcome in the people who are the most friendly and kind and easy. It's our tendency to miss the quiet folks. And so we're kind of always in dialogue about it. And I think do a really good job given how few of us there are there. But it is heartbreaking that, we get these calls and we get these requests and it's just, we can't do it. And yet, if every 54 Catholics take in every one person who's unhoused, well, if there's 8 of us taking in 10, like, statistically, we're doing okay. So I have to have a little compassion for us. And then in the piece of a community building, honestly, it is a slow formation to heal from the process and move through some of the crap that our world puts on us. And I think the best thing that we have are longtime volunteers who continue to show up, who model the culture. We have guests who want a space that's different from everywhere else on Skid Row, who have bought in and helped create the culture that fosters the healing and the connection. And I think we do a good job of modeling and inviting folks into that like, how can you take another step today? Forcing people to take a lunch break and encouraging them into the garden where they have to sit somewhere and maybe talk to someone is maybe a little conniving way to try to get some of that conversation to start. Never forcing fully, but strongly encouraging. And I find folks realize just how people come in with such stereotypes that get shattered so quickly, some of them, that it's like, well, if that one didn't make sense, what about these other ones? And so the fact that we can sit around a chopping block and have 2 hours of stories before we serve our guests gives us a chance to prime people for when they then go outside and have those encounters.
Any other questions in here? As for those on Zoom, if you do have a question, please raise your hand and then we'll go ahead and switch over.
Thanks, Dylan, and thank you both. I have more comments than questions. I'm Bob Williams, and I'm here from the Episcopal Diocese. And I'm struck by your mention, Joan, of working with the Archdiocese for so many years, as we've done here, and mobilizing the parishes. And as you were saying, 54 Catholics or Episcopalians could help one person, how much better off we'd be. So I'm taking away inspiration from the two of you, both in dealing with the institution and one-to-one, and want to make sure you feel very welcome on behalf of the Episcopal Diocese here. My parents are named Joan and Bob, and they're nowhere near doing what you're doing. So I'm taken by that, and the intergenerational nature of your presentation is so inspiring, I think, to all of us. So thank you very much. I have one update for this group. We enjoy Lunch and Learn and coming every month. And a few months ago, a couple of us were lamenting the fact that we had an encampment. We had not so much an encampment, but an emporium back here on Laguna Avenue with an individual named Caesar. And thanks to one of these Lunch and Learn gatherings where Sarah from the Silver Lake Homeless Resources was here. I want you all to know that she really made a meaningful connection with Caesar and his situation, and Caesar is now housed in
Fantastic.
supportive housing. So
One
thank
by
you,
one.
Lunch and Learn. Thank you, the two of you, for your inspiration.
And you know what? I think that takeaway of that is one by one. It's not, oh, there's a million people that it's one by one. So it makes a lot different. Good.
Hi, comment and then two questions. Thank you both. You're so inspiring. And it occurred to me, Matt, that you could volunteer to preach from the pulpit, maybe start at La Cañada. I mean, you're a wonderful preacher, and turn our eyes and hearts and souls to God. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good.
The questions, one on your involvement with nuclear war, and you recently went to Vandenberg. So I know that's been a long history. So say more about that. And then you said something about going on immigration, going to neighborhoods. I'm not aware of specific neighborhoods and what kind of support
Yeah.
or witness you are doing or others could be doing.
Yeah. So there's an amazing coalition called the Community Self-Defense Coalition, spearheaded by a group called Unión del Barrio, a group who's been doing community patrols for decades because a lot of communities have always been on guard from assaults from the state. But they've been training people to drive around. So in Boyle Heights, where I live, Centro CSO is a community organization that's kind of taken some of the lead in supporting the neighborhood community. Where they do about a 2-hour training, and they teach you what to look for, how to spot ICE vehicles, how to engage ICE officers, how to record, how to document, how to interrupt, how to read people their rights while raids are happening, trying to get information. It's all incredible stuff that fortunately we've not had to use yet, which just makes us feel more fearful that something's going to happen. But this coalition has organizations all over LA. They've been building partnerships to be like, how do we cover every square inch of this city so that we can be addressing this moment? Because one of the things that they've learned recently because of the work of this coalition, if you look at the number of people who've been picked up in all of the major cities, LA's is significantly lower. And they attribute it to the fact that these organizations and community efforts are out, for lack of a better word, harassing these officers and making their lives incredibly difficult and making them feel unwelcomed, but also of informing people of their rights, of monitoring stuff, reporting things, spreading information quickly in a responsible way. And so it seems to be one of the few things that we actually have available to us in this moment. So happy to tell you more and redirect you after this. In terms of the nuclear stuff, you know, it's so interesting. I made a map the other day. I said, well, if you care about, you know, if U.S. militarism is something you're questioning, there's all these different things you can talk about. And one of them is the weapons themselves. Now you have all these feelings, then in the weapons, there's all these things about like funding and development and stuff, and then use of them, and then use of them goes over. And you pretty soon you have this map where you realize there's all of these things you could be addressing that, and picking the nuclear one is an important one and a traditional one in our movement. But I also realize for a lot of young people, it doesn't capture them in the same way as like racism does in our communities, or the investment that goes into local policing versus into social needs of our community. So the LA Catholic Worker has long witnessed for peace, against nuclear weapons, for reallocation of budgets towards human needs and human dignity. We've been going to Vandenberg Space Force Base for the last 30 some years, witnessing there, witnessing in Nevada, witnessing all over the country. And so we try to continue to have that, but it doesn't look the same as it once did. But we continue to believe that these are the resources of our community. And while we strive for a world where we don't wait for the government, we don't wait for our churches to solve the problems, we also know that if they're going to have our resources, they should be spending them wisely and well. So we continue that witness, but on the scale of what it once was, I'm sure leaves our founding members and some desire that we would grow that. But resistance anywhere is resistance everywhere. These things are all connected. And so whatever the thing is that moves us, we need to find that little patch of earth and just say, this will be my spot. And I find that is the biggest way to have the impact that we desire. I sometimes have my hand in too many pots, and you can't really be as effective in that way.
Any other questions in person? Doesn't look like we have any questions on Zoom right now, but if you do, again, please feel free to raise your hand. Any other questions in here right now, though?
Thank you. Matt, would you please explain a little bit about the philosophy of not accepting government money and not providing a 50 or not receiving a 501c3? So how donations are accepted and the philosophy behind that?
Yeah. So a lot of different Catholic workers do this differently. Not everyone follows this. Dorothy was very much an advocate of not becoming a registered nonprofit. One of the pieces of the philosophy was, this is my spiritual, moral responsibility as a person of faith to do and to support. And therefore, to make it something that can be incentivized, to make it be something that is just easy, takes away from the spirit of which we are to be giving and to be offering of ourselves. Now, that meant something very different back in the day for Dorothy, when people, maybe there was a little bit more expendable income for folks. I have friends my age who are turning their hobbies into ways to make money. And so I think, like, what does it mean for them who want to give, but live in a world that has made it impossible for them to have their needs met? And what do we do with that? And I don't have a good answer to that. But another piece of it too is, and I say this with no disrespect to any organization who's done it this way and who've tried to continue in the face of this, but a lot of incredible organizations get started by impassioned, enlivened people whose spirit and charisma infects the organization in a good way and turns it into something that is a vocation, that is a ministry, that is magic, that is mystery. And sometimes in the transition to nonprofit status, there's a clinging to self-preservation, like this needs to survive at any cost. And that the Catholic worker, Dorothy's vision was, if the Spirit wants this to continue, it will continue. And in a less spiritual way, if you're doing your work right and appealing to people's hearts and they believe in what you're doing, they will support you. And if you aren't, maybe you shouldn't be continuing. I've seen a lot of organizations become, and again, I don't mean to judge everyone in organizations who have been in these places, but a job that pays the bills. And it becomes a thing that just churns out mediocrity. And I think if we cannot keep the fire of the Spirit alive in our work, maybe it's okay if we shut down. Maybe it's okay if we don't deliver poorly produced products to Skid Row and to the surrounding communities. So my goal isn't self-preservation, but I keep thinking about those folks who want to support and who can't. And I think there is a valuable place. We have Catholic workers trying really creative ways to be 501c3s, or because none of us make a salary at the Catholic worker, we also don't have the same overhead expenses that a lot of organizations have. But other places are being like, well, how do we make sure that our folks will at least have Social Security if it exists by the time they retire? So there's a lot of different things that feed it. You know, it's nice not to have all of the government bureaucracy and paperwork and accounting. It's nice not to be having to get a grant and then morph our work to fit the grant versus allowing us the flexibility and nimbleness to be like, this person has a need tomorrow. I don't have to justify it to, you know, this foundation, which can run the risk of being unaccountable, but I think we try to be accountable as well. And since we're a simple, humble operation that doesn't need a lot to run, it's worked this way. We'll see what happens in a couple of years if that changes. But grateful for all those who are courageous and trusting enough to give us the chance to do it this way. But I remember someone saying once to the Catholic worker, to say anything will exist for forever is denying the Spirit. So I'm not ready to say that this will never allow the Spirit to move us in a different way, but it's where we are for now.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. And I have not heard much about Catholic worker, but I really learned a lot from you. I'm a Catholic, but I think a lot more churches, Catholic churches, need to hear from your movement. I think they're kind of sleepy right now. I think I work for a church myself in my own parish, but I think probably you guys being there, visiting and hearing more from you would impassion our people. So.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We're going to be a part of a conversation in a couple weeks trying to imagine how do we bring our Catholic community in this moment. So I might check in with you.
One of the things that you mentioned and has been mentioned several times is the scarcity mentality, when really that's just one of the major myths. And I'd love to hear from both of you just how you confront that myth that keeps sometimes people in fear from sharing, how you deal with that.
One of the things well, of course, I immediately go back to toilet paper during COVID, right? You couldn't find any on the shelf because I can't possibly run out of toilet paper, But, and I think that's where the fair trade piece comes in, because I'm occasionally told, well, that item's a little more expensive because it's fair trade. Like, well, okay, you pay now, you pay later. We have a horrible immigration issue because people can't afford to stay home in their village. If I bought this fair trade item that person made, that I might spend a little bit more, they'd stay home. Oh, then I don't have to do all the funding and all the money spending, to deal with the fact that they're here and they need to have their needs met, et cetera. So, it's beginning to have that shift of, again, your budget's a moral document. And so the concept of sharing and communities, you go into your house, you shut your door, you don't ever have to see your neighbors. My other son loves to have tools. I read today that, well, there's a tool sharing company. Company's spelled not there, where you actually don't have to go buy a ladder because you can go through this service and you get a ladder. And then it's like, well, that makes sense. We don't all need ladders, or we don't all need, those kind of things. I think it's just having those conversations, and especially now it's so hard because Amazon, it's there. It's not even there tomorrow. It's there today. And well, if I can buy 6 or I can buy 12 for only $2 more. And it's so seductive, about the having, and whether it's made out of junk or not, or who makes it is always the question. I think it's just continuing to have, gentle conversations about these kinds of things that, or recycling. A lot of the fair trade stuff is don't buy something, recycle it. Go to the thrift store. Go, you don't always need something that's brand new, but or throw away your car and get another one. So it's just that continual education about how do we live on this planet. It's, as Matt said, it's burning up, and it's caused by all of us, and we have to be part of that solution. So without being moralistic, it's not about being moralistic.
Yeah, I guess just one thought is like it's obviously part of a larger cultural reality of I heard that they're now building houses without front doors so that you don't have to worry about someone knocking on your door. You like drive in your garage, it closes so that you can be like isolated from people. And like scarcity comes when we are in isolation, when we've lost track of the reminder of how interconnected we are to folks, how much we require people and things. And I recognize that when I talk about scarcity, like there is absolutely like a scarcity for the folks that we have on Skid Row, and yet in their scarcity continue to find ways to share in ways that transform and humble me, that make me think like, what the heck am I doing? And I'm grateful for that. And communities who've struggled to have access to their needs being met have like shown us time and time again what we are capable of if we were to follow Christ seriously. And so I try to remember that like none of this is new. Wise people before me have been doing it for a long, long time. But I remember at the LA Catholic Worker, for a long tradition, right before our Christmas appeal went out, the community would give away all of their surplus money and say, we're going to trust that the Spirit is going to take care of us this next year. And the newer generation hasn't been as bold, though we're trying to honor that legacy to be like, yeah, what would it look like if we didn't cling so tightly to this. And when we look at communities, when money is shared amongst them, like it finds a way to settle into the nooks and crannies it needs to. And I think like, what a beautiful act of faith, what a beautiful way to be devoted to God. And then we look at our world, like what a thing that might actually save us.
No, Matt, this may seem like a tangent, but it does connect. One of the things that I love about going to Catholic Worker House on Britannia is that it looks like a home. There's a porch, there's a door, there's garden, there's trees. And I think what we're losing so much and isolating ourselves is community. No front porches, no front yards to be able to grow vegetables and fruits and share with our neighbors. No backyards either. It seems like everything we're isolating ourselves into boxes instead of places where we can greet others to come and to be community together. And real quick, after 9/11, I was talking to my cousin in Tijuana one day, telling him, oh, the people took their lessons on flying a plane in San Diego, and nobody knew who they were or what they were doing, where they were living at. And he said, Prima, that would never happen in my barrio. We know everybody's business.
When we bought our home in '89, we moved back down from the Bay Area, and we did some remodeling, and my husband was insistent, even though we had to get a variance because of square footage, on a front porch. He said, it has to have, I need to sit on that porch. I need to say hi to whoever's walking. I need to engage in that conversation. So, yeah, to your point.
Any other questions? Doesn't look like we have any questions on Zoom as of right now. So any other in-person questions that we've got? I don't believe so.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you
everyone,
all. Thank you all on
Thank
Zoom
you
as
so
well.
much. Some final notes real quick as Sherry comes up. Again, please feel free. Yes, please stay. Thank you again to Matt and Joan. We do have some lovely gifts as well, but then again, please feel free to drop by our table. We do have events coming up as well as some volunteer opportunities. You never know, at a soup kitchen.
Well, my mother used to say, oh, you shouldn't have, but I'm so glad you did. So thank you.
Well, we can't thank you enough. My heart was open, my mind was open to a lot of new ideas, and I know you touched us all deeply. I did write down a couple of the questions. I didn't get all of them, but remember, we want to go out of here and take some actions. So let's see. The first one I captured was, who in community will you take time to learn from? Who in community deserves your support? What do you bring to the struggle, and how are you stretching? How do you bring your faith and wisdom to the work and are excited every day to step into that day? And then the last quote I wrote that I liked: resistance anywhere is resistance everywhere. So that's really strong messaging. So thank you both.
You bet, sure.
And
Thank
wasn't
you.
this a
Thank you
good
all.
twofer today?
There you go. Thanks.